So great job. So guys, I need to say no more because we have a really special guest speaker here this evening. I am fired up that she took time out of her busy schedule to be with us here tonight. I look up to this woman. I remember going to my very first convention and I remember seeing her on stage and just going, wow. I mean, this woman has just so much grace and poise, and she speaks with so much conviction and vision. And I just remember looking at her going, I cannot wait to be just like her. I cannot wait to be on stage like her. She's a true role model to so many individuals, male or female. She's an incredible leader. And because of her, we actually are on this line here. And what I mean by that is she's actually the woman that is responsible for introducing the four gentlemen to each other, the four gentlemen that founded this company 27 years ago. And so guys, we're gonna do things a little different here tonight compared to any guest speaker we've ever had. We're actually going to turn this into an interview conversation because I really want you guys to get to know her. So you guys get your notebooks out, grab your pens, grab an extra pen because you want to make sure you got ink, you know what I mean? And let's pay close attention. Turn your cameras on. She needs to see who's on this call. We want to know who's on this call here, getting ready to hear from a Senior Vice President, Mrs. Debbie Davis. Mrs. Debbie Davis, thank you so much for being on this call here this evening. How are you?
I'm fantastic, thank you. And it is an absolute privilege to be on this call and to share with all of you. I've been enjoying watching some of your training, and I've been enjoying watching the testimonials. My goodness, you guys are killing it. And I'm listening to all the backgrounds, and man, I'm blown away at all of you. And you have just the best leadership you could possibly have. I know this starts from Jeff and Melissa Street and the Mazers, obviously, but this team specifically to Jeff and Melissa Street. And I got to tell you, I have been so impressed and so blown away at their leadership, their mentorship, everything that they are doing for all of you. And what you may not really realize is everything they're doing for our entire company. Having these two on the Circle of Champions has been priceless. And I'm telling you that from being on the Circle since the Circle began. So I've been in every single circle. I've been with every single group of people. And I will tell you that their input into the company on the Circle of Champions has just been absolutely priceless. So you have some amazing shoes to follow there, some amazing shoes to walk right into. So I thank you guys so much for inviting me to be on the call tonight and just share.
Well, thanks again for being on. So first off, we have so many new faces in the business. So many people, as you can see, are just getting promoted faster because of our compensation plan. So many people have never seen you at a company convention. So we'd love to know, Debbie, just a little bit about who you are or who you were prior to getting involved with ACN, prior to getting involved with network marketing.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, no one has ever introduced me before prior to ACN for anything. I'm a housewife. I don't have a college degree. I didn't have any skills. I tried a lot of different things. When I was younger, before I met my husband, I always prayed to be led to do the right things. And I had a mindset, I believe, that I wasn't willing to settle. I wanted more out of life, but I was not afraid of working hard. But because I didn't have school was not for me. In high school, I was a rock solid CD student, and that's it. And I remember going to college. My mom said, you know what, I never went to college. I want you to go to college. I said, all right, whatever. So she sent me to college. She paid my way. My first report card, I remember probably my third, I remember her saying, what are all these I's on your report card? I said, I's? I didn't even know they'd give you I's. I didn't know that was a letter of grade. And she said, wait a minute, could these be incomplete? And I said, yeah, probably. Because I spent all my time in the gym dancing, and I spent the rest of my time in the music room singing. So she said, well, I'm not going to pay for this if you don't really want to go. I said, okay, great. So I quit school. I ended up I got jobs singing in weddings. I sang in a band for 10 years. I had 18 different jobs. I actually, every time I got a job, I was under the impression that people that had jobs liked what they did. For some reason, I thought they liked their jobs. I don't know why, what gave me that impression. But so I would try, I would get a job and I'd be doing it. And then I realized I didn't like it. So I quit. And then I found another job and then I quit. I did that 18 times. The last job was my one and only corporate job. And I'm thoroughly convinced that the only reason that I had that job was, number one, to tell me how much I didn't want to be in the corporate world. No, I'm not knocking it. It just wasn't for me. And number two, it's where I met my husband. So I was convinced that that was the reason that I had that job. That through nepotism, my dad got me because he worked at Chrysler and he was really high up. So, I mean, my history is just like nothing. I sold Tupperware. I sold oil paintings. I made crafts and I sold them in craft shows. I did everything I could to just try to make some extra money. That's once we got married. We had 3 little kids. And I sang until I was 5 months pregnant with my first one. Didn't think in nightclubs that fit the mold. And so I quit. And so I was always looking for some things to do. I got involved in network marketing 4 different times and failed miserably all 4 times and vowed never to get involved again. And so that's kind of my background.
Okay, so I made a side little note. We all need to hear Debbie Davis sing.
No, you don't. No,
yes,
you don't.
Yes, we do. That's a fun fact. That's awesome. So, okay, so you mentioned that you were, had some experience with network marketing. You worked with other companies. So, how did you get involved with ACN?
Well, ACN kind of enveloped me. So I was involved in another company where I met Greg Provenzano, and I was in another company where I met him, and that we became good friends. And in that company, the owners of that company took our money and ran. And so I vowed never to be involved in anything else again. And then he met Robert Stevanovsky, and he got me, well, he didn't get me involved in another company. I actually recruited myself. You want to hear something funny? All 4 companies that I was involved in prior to ACN, I recruited myself. No one has ever called me up on the phone and recruited me. Not one time. I recruited myself in every single thing that I ever did. As a matter of fact, I was so blown away because we were at a convention. I can't remember where it was. It was just last year, I think, or the year before. And I was sitting at the breakfast table waiting. Oh, it was in Charlotte. And I was sitting at the breakfast table in the hotel. We were getting ready to go over to our meeting. And this lady walks up to me. And I'm in a suit and everything. I even got my pins on that say, SVP, COC. And she didn't notice my guess. And she was first at her first convention. And she came up to me and started piquing my interest. And I thought she knew who I was because I was in a group of people that were on our team. And I just, I just assumed, which is dumb. But anyway, so I'm sitting there, I'm listening to her, I'm going, wait a minute, she's not talking to me because of anything. I think she's recruiting me. All this stuff is going in my head. And I'm listening to her, I'm going, oh my gosh, she's piquing my interest. I got so excited because that is literally the very first time that has ever happened. And I didn't tell her who I was or anything. I just filled out the whole thing. I took her card. I said, thank you so much. And then I was that day, I was doing training at the convention on stage. And I told her, thank you very much for recruiting me. It's the first time ever anybody's ever piqued my interest. I can't remember your question. Sorry, I got sidetracked.
That was a really great story. I love it. It was the question of how did you get involved with ACN? I know you know Greg. Yep.
Okay, so I knew Greg, and then another company, we met Robert in that company, and I didn't want to do it because I had been burnt so many times, and he was going to do it though, so I was so mad because I thought, wait a minute, Greg Provenzano was actually going to be like my sponsor. Are you kidding me? So I had to do it. I thought I have to do it. So in that company, I knew these two guys, these twin boys, and I used to, I painted and wallpapered at their stepdad's house, and that's where I met them. And Tony owned his own, no, Tony was in insurance, and Mike owned his own sprinkler company. And so anyway, they were helping me paint because their dad didn't want me to do it by myself because he'd have to pay me too much. So he said, you help her do it. Well, we just instantly became friends. And I heard Tony's whole entire life story in one time when we were just talking. And he said something to me that just blew my mind. He said, you know, Mike and I, and their story, their personal life story is just amazing. But he said to me, he said, Mike and I have always felt like we were destined to do great things. And I remember thinking, and I'm 11 years older than they are. And here he is, 22-year-old kid saying this to me. But all I could think was, wow, I wonder what it's going to be. I wish I could witness whatever it's going to be. And I remember that like it was yesterday. And so that was, you know, a couple of years before, then I got involved in this company and Greg and Robert. And then I recruited Mike and Tony into that company. And they were at that time, you know, a couple of years later, they were at the very top of a company on what would be considered their circle of champions. And so I recruited them into that company that I was with Greg and Robert. And it wasn't literally, it wasn't even 2 weeks. And we found out that that company had like 3 weeks to live. So I felt like, oh no, I have totally ruined their entire lives, you know? And then Greg Provenzano, he called me up and he said, Debbie, before this meeting tonight, we're with that company, he said, I need you to meet me across the street. And I said, okay, what for? He goes, just meet me. So I get in his car and I said, okay, what's going on? He goes, I have some good news and I have some bad news. Which do you want first? And I said, oh my gosh. I said, okay, well, tell me the bad news first. He said, the bad news is that this company has about 3 weeks to live. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I totally ruined Mike and Tony's entire life because they left that company. And I said, okay, quick, tell me the good news. And he said, the good news is that Robert and Mike and Tony and I, we're going to start our own company. And I was like, what? That's not good news. That's bad news and more bad news. What the heck do you guys know about starting your own company? And he goes, Debbie, do you trust me? I said, Greg, you know I trust you. He goes, okay, just trust me. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And I took a deep breath and I said, okay. And we went to that meeting and I mean, and the rest is history. They put this company together after not even knowing each other for 30 days. And I will tell you that that was such a God thing. That wasn't a Debbie thing. That was an absolute God thing. And when Greg Provenzano says this company is destined, you know, was destined and a blessed company, I'm telling you, it is the absolute truth, because I could spend another 10 minutes, and I won't for sake of time, but telling you how I actually met Greg and how I met the whole surroundings of how I met Mike and Tony. And those 2 meetings should never have happened, actually. So it is really quite a story that God put this company together. So when, you know, it wasn't like asking, do you want to get involved in ACN? I was like, you know, I would follow them anywhere.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So now let me ask you this. Being one of the first individuals to be a part of ACN when it was created, were you off to a fast start? Like, were you an instant top producer? What did your early days in ACN look like?
That's hilarious. um, no, I was not. As a matter of fact, when I got involved, I'd failed so many times that I really, I believed in the company. I believed in the co-founders. There were only 20 people in the whole wide world that knew about ACN or cared at the time. And so to be one of those people, there were no success stories to point at. You know, I felt like I was just lucky to tag into what they were doing here. I never saw myself as a top of anything. And I had such a low self-esteem and such a low self-confidence because of all the failures that I had. And, you know, my 3 little kids who I adored are, you know, were my biggest accomplishment. And you don't get paid for that, you know? So, you know, no, I was not. I had zero confidence. I was terrified to do it. In fact, it took me an entire year to do my first presentation. An entire year, a year. And when that happened, some of the top leaders in the office, they were like, Debbie, you know, because when I started, you know, my organization started growing because I shared it with a few who shared it with a few. And I just didn't even know at the time what I was doing, I felt like. And so I was learning as everyone else was learning. And when they said, you know, it would be nice if you could like help us out here and do, I said, what? You don't want me in front of the room and screwing this up for? Are you kidding me? And I'll never forget my very first presentation because I got up there and one of the guys who talked me into it finally, he had just the biggest, most beautiful smile. And he was standing in the back of the room and he had the biggest smile on his face. He was just excited somebody else but him was doing it. So he was standing back there with this big smile like, go, go, go. And all I did was look at him, straight at him. And I thought, don't swallow because you'll have to close your mouth and you won't be smiling at me anymore. And then I'll be afraid that I did something wrong. But I think my whole first presentation was, now it's a good thing, 10 minutes. But then it wasn't, you know, nobody was doing 10-minute presentations. So anyway, yeah, no, to answer your question, I was not.
I love that. Thank you. You give us all encouragement that, you know, we can do it. We can do a presentation. So what were some of your biggest breakthroughs in this business?
Well, you know, I was going to the trainings. I was religiously going to the trainings, but I remember now my husband, he worked at Chrysler. He's got a bachelor's and a master's degree. He worked his way up the corporate ladder. He had a good job there. I did not want him working on the weekends. I said, no, I want you home with the family, you know, it's family time. I don't want you to work on Saturdays. So then we had Saturday trainings, and our Saturday trainings when we started, they went from 9 in the morning until 5 o'clock at night every Saturday. But they were so much fun. I mean, we learned so much and they were just so much fun. And we just, you know, I mean, we weren't sitting there like, oh, when is this going to be over? And do I have to do this again? The only thing that was the problem was that my family wasn't used to me being gone at all, much less for all day Saturday. So I remember telling my husband the first time, I said, I got to go to this Saturday training. And by the way, he was not excited about me doing this in the beginning. I remember when I first came home, I was so excited, but let me back up. It took me 3 weeks to really be super excited about doing this again because I was so scared. But when I got excited, when I saw this, I literally came home and I did a Kramer slide like in Seinfeld, slid into the foyer, and he was sitting on the couch watching TV and he had the remote in his hand and he didn't even look up at me. And I slid in and I go, we're gonna be rich. And here's Jeff again. But I didn't, you know, I mean, really can't knock him for it because that was my track record, you know. So wait, what did you ask me?
What were some of your, I love you so much, Debbie. I love you so much. What were some of your biggest breakthroughs in the business?
Oh, yeah. So I went to the trainings all the time. And I came home and I told him, hey, you know what, this, you know, he finally said, well, first of all, when he made that comment, I said, look, I saw it, you didn't. And so you don't know what I know. You didn't see what I saw. And I said, as long as this is something that is going to be good for me and for our family, you know, I'm not saying I want to go to the bars at night with the girls, you know, I mean, whatever. So I said, as long as this is going to be a good thing for me and for our family, you know, I need you to support me. But I saw it. I love you, but I'm doing it anyway. So the ball is in your court. We can either work together, you know, you can support me and we can be happy, or you can buck me all the way and we can be miserable. But the ball is in your court. And he lovingly said, do what you want to do. You know, you're going to do what you want to do anyway. And I said, thank you. And I went upstairs. I started making my list. But, you know, like I said, he saw me fail so many times that, you know, I couldn't be upset that that was the thing. But I also knew I had to do it this time, because that really helped me, because I really put myself out there and I kept remembering that. I committed to him. I told him that this was different, and I told him that I was going to do this and I was going to be really serious about it. So I knew in my heart I had to commit to it. But in order to commit to it, it was about my Saturday training. So I said, look, I have to go to this Saturday training to learn what it is that I just, you know, did. Obviously, I failed before. I need to be just a blank slate, let them write on my mind and tell me exactly what to do. And I need to be super coachable. So whatever they tell me I have to do, I'm just going to do it. He said, okay, great. So I came home from Saturday training. I said, I think I might need another one. All right. So I went to my next Saturday training. I went 6 weeks in a row. And then I said to Tony Kupas, I said, Tony, listen, I've been coming to every single Saturday training for the past 6 weeks, and they have been just fantastic. But you go over, you know, the same things every week. So I want to know, how many of these do I need to come to? And he looked at me and he said, Debbie, you don't have to come to any of them. This is your business. You can do whatever you want. And I said, okay, but what? Because I heard what he didn't say. I said, but what? He goes, but I would just suggest that you come to them until you could stand up here and give one. And I thought, oh my Lord, I'm going to be coming to these for the rest of my life. Because I never thought in a million years I'd ever be on a stage training anybody, anything. So that was when I realized, you know, I needed to make a decision. Am I going to really commit to this, or am I just going to play around with it? And that's when Jeff and I had to have a conversation, you know, and the conversation, it stemmed around our why. You know, why were we doing it? Well, you know, my initial goal was to make $200 a month. I wanted $50 a week to take my kids to brunch every Sunday because I hate to cook. Now that's pretty pathetic, but you have to keep in mind, I failed so many times. I figured I could make a couple $100 a month doing just about anything. So I wouldn't have to say I failed yet one more time. But the other thing was, there was not one single success story in our company to point at. There's not a soul that had made a dime. We did not have the bonuses that you have today starting out to get you off to a fast start. So I set my goals low. Now, our other goal was, I mean, we had, one of the reasons that I wanted to contribute to the family finances in the first place was because we had some dreams and goals. We had our dream home on paper for 18 years. We would take our plans that we drew up, and we would go to a place like, you know, like the Chuck E. Cheese's. They had one here. It was called Major Magics. And the kids would play on all these things, and Jeff and I would sit there and we would go through our plans. And I remember we did that like almost every Friday night. And so we were like, you know, dreaming about one day breaking ground on this home. And we wanted to design it what we wanted, not what we could afford. So we wanted to build what we wanted to build. So that was another one of our dreams. The thought that ACN was actually going to help us do that, to the extent that it did, never entered my mind. We were just looking at, you know, extra money for that. But another one of the breakthroughs, I remember the question, another one of the breakthroughs that we had, well, first of all, was the thought of the why, you know, really committing and making that decision together. You know, do we want this badly enough? Do we want what we want badly enough to grow through, be willing to grow through what we needed to grow through? And when I say we, I mean, you know, you can't, if you're a couple, for example, and one is doing all the growing and the other one isn't, that's not a good thing. So we realized from the beginning we needed to grow together. Even though our roles were separate and different in the beginning, we still needed to grow. And we both needed to grow. So that was a really important thing. So do we want what we want badly enough to be willing to grow? Another thing that really helped me was Mike Kupitz, one of the co-founders, Tony's brother, identical twin. We were very good friends, and Michael kept telling me every time he saw me, one day, Debbie, you're going to be one of the top people in this company. Now, I thought that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard in my life, because who am I? I mean, that's how I felt. Who the heck am I? And why would you think that about me? And, you know, I'm thinking, oh, he's so sweet. You know, he's saying that because we're good friends and he likes me. That's so nice. He's being really supportive. Every time that he would say that to me, I would go, yeah, right, Mike, give me a break. You know, every time we would just, that same exact conversation, until one day when I said that, he goes, wait a minute, it just dawned on me. Whatever you think, you're right. So maybe you won't. And I thought, what? Are you kidding me? He said, if you don't think that you will, then you probably won't. When he said that, it was just like somebody hit me in the gut. It was a gut check. And I thought, oh my gosh, okay. Because I do not think that that's true. So what has to change in order for it to be true? My thinking. Now, I had work ethic all day long, but it was my thinking. I sabotaged myself for 2 solid years in this business. 2 solid years it took me to really believe that I could do it. Now, back then, RD, you had to become a regional director. You had to have 5 legs with 200 customers in each leg. Now, I didn't say points. Every service was only 1 point. It was long distance only. And you needed 5 legs of 200 households in each one of those legs. That was just RD. RVP was 5 legs of RDs. So 5 legs of 200 points each. So it was a lot different than it is today. And it took me 3 years to get to that position. And I did not break any records. There were many people that got there way before me. And many of those people were in my organization. And so, you know, we were very, very blessed. But I also thought, I want to capitalize on what's being built here. You know, so yeah, I had to grow. I had to really, really grow.
Wow, that was awesome. And going based off what you just said, as far as you really wanting to capitalize what was building underneath you, you know, many of the individuals that are on this call here don't realize that we're in your downline. You know, Patrick and Michael Mazer is a part of your organization. So speaking of that, what has had to happen over the course of the last 27 years or so to find leaders like Patrick and Michael Mazer? You know, what had to happen to find leaders in your organization?
Well, you know, that's a great question, because when I saw this business early on, what I realized, the one thing that I did realize was that you need to find leaders in order to build a significant business. And because I realized that it doesn't happen from one person. I don't care who you are. One person alone cannot get to SVP. It doesn't happen that way. And to be an RVP, I needed 5. So in my mind, I was always on a leader hunt. That was what was in my head. Now, interestingly was, even though I did not see myself as a leader, that's the very last thing I saw myself as, was a leader. I realized later that I was doing leadership things. I realized that I was a leader. I just didn't really realize it. I didn't know it. So I was looking for a leader, but I wasn't recognizing the leadership qualities in myself. So, I mean, I had a tremendous work ethic. And Larry Raskin, many of you don't know, he's down in the Asia Pacific marketplace now, but he kind of coined this phrase of 8 to faint, of working 8 to faint. And I'm thinking, 8 to faint? Are you kidding me? I got 3 little kids. I can't work 8 to faint. But I worked all that I could. And it ended up being 8 to faint with everything else that I was doing. But I just did everything in the cracks. And it was, from this, here's what I really thought of it. It was full time in my head, in my thinking, even though at the time I couldn't do everything 100% full time, 24 hours a day. So it had to be full time in my thinking. And so I realized I knew what a leader looked like because I knew Greg, I knew Mike and Tony, I knew Robert. They were tremendous leaders. I knew their qualities, their character, their integrity, their ethics. I knew their work ethic, their focus, their drive, their determination, all the things that it takes for somebody to succeed. And I knew their no quit attitudes. I learned from them what a leader looks like. And so I was looking for those people. And what I realized too, that, in ACN, if you had to have, for example, which you don't, now you only need 3,000 points in separate legs, but if you still look at it as, to get to RVP, by the way, but if you still look at it as, I need to find, you have to have separate legs because it taps out at 750 points in one leg in order to get to RVP. But if you look at it from the standpoint of not looking at points and people, but looking for leaders, looking at leaders, you're on a leader hunt. Now, when I started, I had already talked to everybody so many times. This was now my 5th time in this industry. So everybody that I knew, I had talked to multiple times about looking at an opportunity for me. I literally could not recruit one single person that I knew. I could not recruit one single family member. It took me 10 solid years to recruit the first person who was a friend prior to 1993 that I knew before I started this business. It took me an entire year to recruit my very first family member. I'm sorry, I take that back, 3 years, because I hit RVP. When I hit RVP, I recruited my very first family member. And I'm thinking, oh, thanks, I don't need you now. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, it was, so you might say, okay, well then who did you recruit? You didn't recruit any of your friends, you didn't recruit any of your family members. So what I realized was that there are still tons and tons of people out there all over the place. And I just had to get creative. So when I would go to someone and ask them if they were open to looking at something, if they said no to me, like many of them did, and I was really also, this is another thing that I think was a leadership thing that I didn't realize at the time. I was committed to getting a no to a presentation before you could tell me no. So if somebody just said, no, I'm not interested in hearing something, I would back it up and say, well, wait a minute. I'm not asking you to do something. I'm just asking you to look at something. How could you say no? I'm if they said, I can't really, I'm not interested. No, I'm not interested. I'm not interested. Well, I apologize because maybe I gave you the wrong impression. I'm not actually inviting you to do anything at this point. In order for me to invite you to do something, you would have to at least look at it and see what it is that I'm doing. So I apologize if I gave you the wrong impression. I'm not trying to get you into something. And that's how I did it. So if they said no after they saw a presentation, I would say, oh, in fact, I almost acted excited like, oh, no, that's okay, that's okay. But just let me ask you a question. Who do you know that is, maybe a little more open-minded or maybe open to looking for opportunities that could actually give them an opportunity to, make something on the side of what they're doing? Who do you know that might fit that bill? Like, of course I didn't expect you to, but who do you know? And that's kind of how I approached it. And I remember, well, I'll tell you exactly how we got down your line. Is from Danny Volanino. And Danny Volanino was up in Rochester, New York. It's a 6-hour drive from me at my house. And luckily for me, I recruited him in the winter, and every trip I made there, it was through a snowstorm. And I drove there and back and forth and back and forth, like many of the top leaders have done and do in not right this minute, but have done to build their business. But, so I found Danny and just, dug. So tap rooting is the way that I find leaders. Danny is on my 5th level, I think. So, when I recruit somebody into the business, then it's, the $1 million question to me is, who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know? Who else do you know? Who else do you know? And so I would find through my neighbor, I found, who do you know? He led me to somebody else. Who do you know? Led me to someone else. Who do you know? And so, that's just how I dug, because I knew that my neighbor was not going to be the leader unless she grew into the leader. So look, I was not the leader. I grew into the leader. Okay. So I also give people space to grow, because I know me. No one tried to recruit me. Like I said, I had to recruit myself into everything. So you just never know about people. So you want to give them the opportunity to grow, plug them into the trainings and all that. But while you're doing that, it's about where you spend your time. And I found that spending 80% of my time, looking for new people, and 20% of my time with people was a good thing until you get a good number of people. Now you got to spend 80 of your time supporting and getting people going. Once people get going, and now they're becoming the leaders. Now you can go back to spending 20% of your time with the team and 80% of your time hunting and digging. That was a long answer.
I love it though. You know what though? I love it because I think, we sometimes forget how powerful those 4 words are. Who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know? Who else do you know? So I took a lot out of that. And you talked about, developing into a leader, that you had to grow into a leader. So one of the last questions here before we wrap it up is, next Friday, we actually have a huge, we call it the extravaganza leadership event next Friday that some of the individuals here on this call don't even know that's going to happen. And it's actually a collaborative Rockstar team leadership class with co-founder, Mr. Tony Kupis. So what would you say would be maybe a couple of tips or advice that you can give on how to maximize that event? How can we go out and really take advantage of the next event on next Friday?
Well, yeah, actually, this is a phenomenal opportunity, number one, for you to be able to actually hear at this type of a setting from Tony Kupis is crazy. All right. And to be able to plug into all the other rock stars, because you just have, honestly, the best leadership this company has to offer. And I know I'm speaking to the choir here with Pat and Mike Mazer, but oh my goodness. I mean, if I could be recruited again, really, truly, you've just got such great coattails to hold on to. But Tony Kupis is still the Tony Kupis that he was 27 years ago, only better. But what I mean by this, still the same, is his energy, his excitement, his enthusiasm, his heart is still exactly the same way. His character, he has not changed who he is one single iota. He was amazing then, he's amazing now. I learned this business from him, and I sat in his trainings every single week. And he and Mike are really the reason that I believe that I'm where I'm at. They were my mentors. They were basically my sponsor, because my sponsor is basically the company. So I had no upline. I had nobody to do a presentation for me. Nobody did a launch for me, ever. Nobody did a PBR for me. Nobody did that kind of stuff, ever. So I'm telling you, to hear him, you know, it is just such an amazing treat. Now, here's what I want to promise you. It doesn't matter how, by the way, Melissa, do you qualify for this training? What do you have to do to get onto this training?
You'd have to be customer qualified and have your first PBZ.
Okay.
Zoom.
So obviously all of you have qualified for that because you're here, and I'm assuming that's what you have to qualify here. So it's just like an international convention or a Saturday training or in any training. My thought is never, I just want to be there. You know, I never think about, oh, I want to be at that. My whole thought is how many people on my team can I get to listen to that with me? How many people on my team can I get into that training or get into that, whatever it is, that leadership or on this call? How many people can I get there with me? And the reason is, I learned this from the international conventions because I remember the first time that we had one. And at that time, it wasn't an international convention. It was our biggest, it was 300 people in a hotel room. It was our first annual convention, our very first big meeting at the end of the year. 350 people or something like that. And it was huge. We were blown away at how big it was, you know, I mean, because it was the very, very beginning of the company. And I remember thinking at that, even with just that small of a thing, I remember thinking, wow, I cannot imagine not being here. And I remember looking around at the people on my team that were there, and I remember thinking, they feel exactly the way that I do. They think exactly the way that I do right now. I know they do because I was looking at their faces. Everybody was excited and, you know, bouncing out of their chairs practically. And I thought, that's it. That is it. That's the key right there. Because look, I didn't want to be on that stage. I knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't do stuff that they were doing, but all I had to do was get people to listen to them and they would build my business. And I thought, oh my gosh. So I got great at promoting the international conventions, the Saturday trainings, the whatever it is. This leadership is another example of that, because the more people that it's about real estate. Some of you are in real estate. It's about real estate. The more real estate you own, the faster you're going to go, all right, and more success you're going to have. So the more people you have sitting on that screen in those little boxes, the more people that you have, that's your real estate, the better it is for you. So my question would not be, are you going to get on that call next week? My question would be, how many people are you going to expose this opportunity to so that they can get in, get qualified, get customer qualified, and have their first PBZ? How many people can you do that with between now and that week? So it's these weekly, these whatever time frame they are, these situations where you have these goals to shoot for, that's the thing that's going to just propel your business like crazy. So if you use all of these things as a tool to build your business, I'm telling you, your business will explode. So it doesn't matter how many people you have on that call, you're going to be kicking yourself you didn't have more. Doesn't matter how many, you'll always be kicking yourself you didn't have more.
Wow. Okay, just for fun, the very last question we're going to ask you. How many customers do you have in your downline?
There's a whole bunch.
So much.
So it's around, I feel like the other gal looking it up. Let me see. I don't know. It's around 1 million. It's just crazy, isn't it? And what you have to realize though is that's 27 years plus of time that has gone by. And it also is, I've got just the most amazing team. I mean, look at, you are all responsible for a part of that, not me, you know. So it's just, we've been super blessed by so many incredible leaders that have worked so hard and that are building their teams, and you know, it just adds to it. But here's what I'll tell you. The only difference between me and you, every one of you, is time and effort and looking for your leaders. And that's all it is. So there's not one person that can't do the same thing. So, you know, I don't actually like saying that because it sounds so ridiculous, because it certainly is not typical in any way, shape, or form, but it's true, and it shows you what can happen given time. So I love the fact that ACN is a vehicle that allows you to grow, to become better in every arena of your life as a result of the growth that you grow through this business, and it allows you to do whatever you want. So dream big, guys, and set your goals. And I'm super, super proud of Jeff and Melissa Street and everything that they're accomplishing, and everything they've already accomplished, and all the people that they're helping, and their hearts are so big, and they're just such incredible. Yes, my dream home happened. Thank you. But yeah, so I mean, you guys have great leadership, and I'm so grateful for ACN, and I'm so grateful for not just the opportunity, but the opportunity to have so many incredible friends, and you met along the way, and be so inspired by so many great people like Jeff and Melissa Street. So I thank you so much and I know I'm looking at the clock here, we've gone way over, and I apologize, but I appreciate the opportunity.
I am so grateful. I know everyone here got at least one thing, that one nugget they needed to apply to their business to take it to the next level. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Everyone, if we could just show a reaction with the clapping, or give Ms. Debbie Davis a round of applause. Thank you so much for just pouring into us. 27 years of experience, and you just poured it into us in a 40-minute window. We're so grateful for you. I want to say one thing. Debbie talked about how in the very beginning she was constantly going to trainings, because we all know repetition is the mother of learning, right? And she talked about how she kept going to training because she was trying to learn. She wanted to continue to build her craft and sharpen her axe. So as we wrap it up here, I want to share with you guys this. We have a special event tomorrow. Some of you have heard of it before, but it's the ACN Super Saturday event. So take a screenshot of this, because tomorrow we have not that right there, but the ACN Super Saturday event at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Zoom meeting ID numbers right there on the screen. Take a screenshot of this. It's a call that's led by senior vice presidents and regional vice presidents. We actually have our mentor, senior vice president, Mr. Patrick Mazer, the #1 producer in the company for 13 years in a row now, is the one of the featured speakers. So you guys, share and go with what Debbie just shared with us. Don't be the only one on the call in your team. How much real estate can you have on this call tomorrow? How can you duplicate yourself? Whether it's one extra person that you made an extra phone call to, or 5 extra people, whatever the case may be. But here's your next event to promote too. And as you continue to do that wash, rinse, repeat effort, you're naturally filtering these people into getting qualified. They're excited because they got started. They're ready to have their first Zoom presentation, and congratulations, they've now graduated to Friday Night Leadership class. But it all starts with, what is the next event? So the next event is tomorrow, Super Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And then again at 10 a.m. Pacific time, which will be 1 o'clock Eastern time, same meeting ID number. You guys, I encourage you, everyone plug into that event. So again, one more time, for a big thank you to Mrs. Debbie Davis, Senior Vice President and Circle of Champions member. I'm gonna unmute the lines really quick so we can all say thank you to Ms. Debbie Davis. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you very much.
Thank